What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, India. Big news, India. I've been ringing the India bell for a while, talking about this probably one of the most dangerous as far as potential geopolitical global power shifts there are, even more so than China to me. Because unlike China, I don't really think India has a geographical check. It's out there in the Indian Ocean along with room and space to spare, not so much on the subcontinent, but just regionally, and they are making some moves now, and people are starting to notice. To start with, Ursula von der Leyen often meeting with Prime Minister Modi, and they're announced what they're calling the mother of all deals. That's to be debated. But basically, this is what India has needed all along, and you have to blame America first. Europe has been scrambling, and they just announced the deal with Mercosur a week or two ago, and now they're announcing this next deal with India, and it is what we think it's going to be. You have Europe with capital and high tech industry that needs to get those to customers that aren't in Europe, and you have India, a bunch of customers that that work at a low wage or affordable wage that can basically export their technology, I mean their skilled tech workers, as well as their low price goods. A prime example will be textiles. So this is all about lowering tariffs on both sides, so making those goods affordable in each other country. And India, of course, I haven't seen it yet, but there's really only one thing that India can really offer, and that is people. If it's one thing India has in abundance, it has a lot of people. And guess what? It's more people to come. India is going to experience the one of the largest population booms over the next 20, 30 years. So Indian population is going nowhere. It's only getting larger. And guess what? India has about four times the population of the US, the United States, and about a third the size of the United States. Those people are going to need, for lack of better phrasing, living space. And this has been the India model for those that have been paying attention. Unlike China, which really just seeks to exert some space to fortify themselves, India is looking to expand these demographics. India alone cannot sustain its population, and Indians, for the most part, for the last 3, 4, 5 centuries, have just been following the British. And you'll see a lot of Indians in Anglo markets. South America, you have a lot of Caribbean islands or Caribbean country. They have a lot of Indians. If you look at South Africa, a lot of Anglo countries in Africa, they usually have more Indians. Now, recently, in the modern era, if you look at the Indian diaspora, the major points they're going to be at are going to be North America, United States, Canada, Europe, and the Middle East. And this is really interesting because I told you this is a grand strategy for India. It actually complements them because they're exporting their high skilled labor to the Western or first world markets. So places like Europe, America, Canada, they're getting tech workers, engineers, doctors, right? And they offsetting on a low end, they're also exporting people. And this is where you get your Indians in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, and UAE. These are going to be more of your unskilled labor or construction laborers or domestic workers or retailers. So India is exporting people all across the gamut so far, and they have the largest diaspora in the world. And not only that, Indians are loyal. And when I say they are loyal, India also has the largest remittances in the world. They remit over $100 billion back to India. If it was its own country, India remittances would rank in the top quarter of global GDP. So not only are Indians coming, taking jobs with their great skill work ethic, they're also keeping a loyalty to the homeland and sending money back, whether that's support family or invest. They have exceptionally large remittance of over $100 billion. So not only are they making way with this new deal, they got PM Carney, who's also trying to figure it out because he got a small. He got the same problems that Europe has, but the difference is they got a lot of resources in Canada and not that many people. And but at the same time, they need markets. So of course he's going to do the same thing. And India's probably going to. Many people have already murmured about the large or the significant Indian population in Canada. It's about to get more significant, or if that's a word. Like it's about to get larger in Canada because that's exactly what India's going to go for. These countries need people to sell to. Before it was a collaboration, it was a team effort. There was on one accord with the United States, and the United States was always that market of last resort. Of course, the United States was a preferred market. So it was more akin to Western markets of Canada and the European Union. But with this closing off, with this isolationism, which is basically America first, what that really is, the world is regressing back to the early 20th century, and the world is starting to look more, and not as far as the countries, obviously time has moved on, but it's definitely starting to take the same organic shape where the United States is retrenching and everybody else is left to their own devices, and you start building little fiefdoms. And of course, I always said India, I always look at the tripolar world here. A lot of people talk about Russia, but as the famous Doug Casey would say, it's a wheat field with a gas station. It's not to say Russia don't have enough bombs to blow the world over, but really, Russia never really got on its feet. It's a relatively young country like the United States, but they had a lot of catastrophic problems, whether that's being invaded in two world wars, whether that's the communism taking out nearly a century of development for them. So Russia constantly got set back as well. They don't have as much favorable geography as the United States. They have a very condensed western portion, the high GDP concentrated western region of the country, your St. Petersburg, your Moscow, your Sochi. Like you're going to have that western part, but they have this massive expanse of Siberia, which, relatively speaking, not that many people live. It's going to have some resources, but it's a large, basically, exposure, given Russia one of the largest border in the world, and with numerous neighbors along it. So it's always been in like a vulnerable position. And even now, Russia has been separated from world markets. So they really never got a chance to hit a proper stride. So what Russia is going to be is going to be an agricultural and resource cache to one of the great powers. Now, before the great powers, in my mind, was always United States, India, and China. And Russia has a complementary relationship with all three of these countries. But with America first, Trump had just introduced Europe as another competitor. Before, Europe was acquiescence. Europe didn't really want to part. They were okay living a comfortable life, having the migrants come in, take jobs, welfare state, 1 month vacation. That was no problem. But now Trump is like, well, I want to leave you to your own device. So the Europeans are starting to wake up. If you saw the news, now they're talking about kicking out American tech firms or starting their own tech firms. So America First is basically creating another comparator with this in this paradigm of global power politics. So going back to India though, but India is taking advantage of this. It's a growing country. It grows about 5-7% GDP per capita a year, depending on what metrics you're looking at. And they just got the Chagos deal, the Chagos Island, which is in the Indian Ocean. That supposedly Trump's very angry about that. But those are islands that's going to go to Maldives. Maldives is under India's thumb. So this is kind of like, I always call it the Hawaii of the Indian Ocean. It's not that much land in the Indian Ocean. So anything out there is premium. And these islands or atolls they were the strategic base for the U.S. within Diego Garcia. It was so vital that the British they actually removed the citizens there, put it there and put bases there. So the British are giving that back to the Maldives. Everybody know the Maldives is a island chain. It's no real power. So basically, whether it's going to be China or India, they're going to assert their influence on Maldives. So basically, the West has no geopolitical position in the Indian Ocean right now directly. So what you're seeing now is India doubled down. They're building these relationships. They have this massive diaspora that's highly loyal, and they are rising through the ranks right now. So we'll see what happens on the detail of the Canada deal. I'm going to be looking out for that. But the Indian market is really value add, and the more you give them, the more they're going to take. They're a top refiner. They may not have a lot of resources as far as industrially, but It's because they're sitting in Africa pocket. That's another thing. So India hasn't even really exercised those countries I mentioned for the diaspora. India really hasn't even tapped into the open space or the opportunities of East Africa to what it truly could. And East Africa is being its neighbor right there. India could clean up some of the wealthiest Africans are on, especially they are living in East Africa, and a lot of them are Indian. So Indians do have a familiarity, but it's going to be a great opportunity there. But right now, if you look at what India do, they refine oil. That's a big industry for them. India doesn't create oil. So where are they getting the oil from? Right now, they're keeping Russia alive by taking Russian oil and selling it to the Europeans, ironically, which is what's like making Trump angry, is pissing him off, is that you're like, you guys say you guys have a war with Ukraine and Russia, but every time we turn around, you're buying Russian oil. And also India is taking oil from sub-Saharan Africa. You know, you have countries like Angola out there that are one of the major oil producers of the Southern Hemisphere. So it's a lot of moves that India's make. They're really getting a representation now, I think, in the headlines. And America First, and this is why I'm not a big fan of American First. I don't understand the strategy. America First says we are the strongest continent, America, United States. We are the strongest country. We are the strongest country. Therefore, we do what we want and we can get stronger and stronger and stronger. But the problem is, America isn't the strongest continent. And that was the whole premise of the Rimland theory of establishing anchors in Western Europe and Eastern Asia. Now, because America is going back and retrenching America First, I think Trump just um, talks about putting tariffs on South Korea now. I think they're going to raise tariffs for 25%. Now, I'm all about fair trade, etc., but it has to be done in a very strategical way. When you do things bluntly like this, what happens if Korea is unified? Even worse, what happened if Korea was unified under a communist North, right? Under the finger of China. And these are scenarios that can play out. Now America really is in trouble. China take Taiwan. That pretty much cuts off the lifeline from South China Sea to so-called American allies of South Korea and Japan. With Europe rising and American companies getting kicked out of Europe, that's going to open it up to another competitor. Europe hasn't even tapped into Africa yet. India really hasn't tapped into Africa yet. Africa is the ones really losing right now because they need to be competing now. They're going to be caught, and they're not going to see, just like slavery, they're not going to see the invaders until the invaders land on their shore. It's going to be too late for them to compete. So it's a world of opportunity like now, and America First treats America like it's the only country in the world. Yes, it's the most powerful country in the world. The question is it on the most powerful continent in the world? And that is to be debated. So I love to hear your thoughts. Comment below, like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.